Hey, good afternoon, committee. We have a full day today, and if you ever lost something or never found something that you were looking for, that's kind of where we are today. So anyway, we will move on. Senate is in session right now, so just means nothing really other than one of our bills is one of the senators, and so we're kind of watching that. So what we will do, first to get underway, we will seek approval of minutes for February 9th, 10th, 12th, 16th, and 24th. They were, I believe, emailed out to you either late last week or on Monday. So do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Mosier, seconded by Roth. Any discussion? Seeing none, they are approved. All right. Next up, we will open the hearing on Senate Bill 425, and we'll call on Revisor Kyle Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 425 would increase the maximum annual registration fee amount for seed retailers and wholesalers. It would authorize a late fee for registrations renewed after the registration deadline, and it would provide a grace period for late registrations for agricultural seed and live plant dealers. Currently, KSA 2-1421A provides for a $300 registration fee for seed wholesalers and a $30 registration fee for seed retailers. The bill would increase the fee for seed wholesalers from $300 to $400 and the fee for seed retailers from $30 to $50. Additionally, current law provides that the registrations of seed wholesalers and retailers expire on August 31st of each year. The bill would authorize a $25 late fee for registrations renewed on or after September 15th, or a $50 late fee for registrations renewed on or after October 15th. Under current law, live plant dealer licenses expire on January 31st, and licensees are currently subject to a $25 late fee after that date or a $50 fee after March 1st. The bill would move these late fee dates to February 15th and March 15th, sort of matching the grace period for the seed wholesalers and retailers. Senate Bill 425 would become effective upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'll take preliminary questions.
Questions for Kyle? Representative Roth?
I got just a touch confused as usual. You mentioned live plant retailers and seed retailers. Okay, so this applies to both people that sell live plants and then people that sell seeds.
The only provision of the bill that concerns the live plant dealers is Section 2. That was added by the Senate committee, and that was just to extend their grace period for late fees. The live plant dealers already have late fees that are in statute. So the provisions in Section 1 that increase the annual license fees, that's just for the seed wholesalers and seed retailers.
One more question.
Okay, go ahead.
And Kyle, thank you for that answer. Also, what kind of seeds are we talking about?
There's a specific definition of seed in the statute. It's pretty all-encompassing, focusing on agricultural seed, but I don't have that definition memorized. I could get back to you or the conferees could flesh that out.
But that probably wouldn't include marijuana seeds.
It includes lawful cannabis sativa seeds.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Kyle. Walter Schmidt, do you have a fiscal note for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Walter Schmidt with Legislative Research. So the bill was amended by the Senate. This fiscal note is as introduced. The Kansas Department of Agriculture indicates that the enactment of the bill would increase revenues by $53,085 in fiscal year 2027 and fiscal year 2028 based on current seed dealer registrations through anticipated fee increases of $41,560 or 33%, plus anticipated late fees increases of $11,525. Any expenditure increases caused by the enactment of the bill would be absorbed by existing agency resources.
Okay, questions for Walter? Seeing none, we will continue on. Our oral proponent today is Josh McGinn, Assistant Secretary of the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Welcome back to committee.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know you have a busy day, so feel free to cut me off whenever. Thank you for the chance to testify in favor of this bill. This is an important bill, an important program for our department, and there's, as you know, most of the Department of Agriculture is fee funded, and this is just one of those revenue streams paid for by the industry and supported by the industry. So Senate Bill 425 primarily just updates our fee schedule for seed retailers and seed wholesalers in the state of Kansas. The primary economic value of this is significant because this includes all row crops and grass in the state, which is, we estimate, about a 9.919 billion in total economic value for the state, and then 14.8 billion in just indirect activity as well. So incredibly important industry for the state, and as I will detail later, also this fee-funded program is incredibly small compared to the size of the industry that it regulates. So to answer Representative Roth's question, the definition of agricultural seed for this act means the seed of grass, legume, forage, cereal, fiber crops, oilseed, food plot seed, and any cannabis sativa crop authorized by state law. And then it goes on from there. It does not include any seeds generally classified as vegetable, fruit, flower, tree, or shrub and grown for personal use or commercial use, except that cover crop seed shall be considered agricultural seed. So with that, I just want to say really quickly what our inspectors are looking for. When you buy seed, you want to make sure that it works and that it germinates, really. So they're talking about the germination percentage, the percentage of pure seed, the percentage of inert materials in that seed, any other crop seeds, and critically, the absence of noxious or prohibited weed seeds in that mixture. So that's what they're primarily looking for and trying to protect the industry and the consumer from buying seed that includes anything that they did not pay for. So it's really a consumer protection. Currently, the maximum annual seed registration fee, so remember when I was talking about the size of this industry, and many of you are probably familiar with how much a unit of seed costs, but currently the maximum annual registration fee is $300 for wholesalers and $30 for retailers. Those fee caps were established in 1991. So we're asking for the first increase in the fee cap since 1991 today. And the current regulation fee is $250 for wholesalers and $30 for retailers. We're only asking to go up to $50 for retailers and $400 for wholesalers, and we will not immediately go to that cap. Similar to when the law was passed in 1991, it was set at a certain level, and then many years later, they started to increase it based on the costs that were increasing. The reason that we're asking for this as part of our entire plant protection program is that this funds a seed dealer program that is funded out of the same fund that also funds our plant dealers and also funds our export certifications. So with any fee-funded program, you want to make sure that it is paying for the service that it provides. And over the years, because of cost increases, it is no longer paying for those services. But we're still talking about relatively small numbers in the grand scheme of the state budget. So currently, we estimate that this program is generating about $127,000 annually. We would like to, with this bill, and the fiscal note has not changed from the Senate version, we would like to increase that to up to $170,000 total annually, which would match our costs for this program. And basically bring us into balance, and I would hope that the agency would not have to ask for another fee increase for many years. The last thing I want to address is the late fees. So the reason that this bill deals with plant dealers is because we asked this year for a late fee for seed dealers. That is because 4 years ago, we asked for a bill that allowed us to charge a late fee for plant dealers. We noticed an extreme improvement in people getting their plant dealer license on time, so that's why we're asking for a late fee for seed dealers. We had close to 500, not over 500, late registrations this most recent registration cycle. It is just an extreme impact on our program staff to have to chase those registration for months on end. And also we were told that we needed statutory authorization to charge a late fee. So that is why we're asking for a late fee. The Senate, in their wisdom, decided to add a grace period of 15 days. In our opinion, there is still a deadline. All we want is a deadline. And why plant dealers were included is we want them to have the same grace period if the seed dealers have one, so that everyone is treated the same. The last thing I'll mention is that actually, even though when we think about agricultural seed in the state of Kansas, we mostly think about farmers, our number one license category is actually big box stores with 36% of our registrations. Small businesses is 31%, co-ops and grain and feed is 18%. So they probably do a larger number by volume, but actually a lot of your big box stores that sell seed also register with our program. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Questions for Josh, Representative Neely?
How much or how often and how much, I guess, of the seed do they test and everything for impurities, et cetera?
Thank you for the question. I'd have to defer to our program on that, but I forgot to mention, I think it's basically on a sample approach, and all of the seed is sent to the Kansas Crop Improvement Association, who is the entity that does the actual testing, but I will have to get back to you on exactly how much is tested.
Questions, Representative Fairchild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Even though this bill isn't a fee increase on farmers, it still seems to me like the cost of the fee increase could potentially be passed on to farmers in the in the form of higher costs for sacks of seed. And so I was just wondering what your thoughts on that are.
Thank you for the question, Representative Fairchild. Most fees do get passed on to consumers. I will agree with you there. But given the size of the industry that we're talking about, it's difficult to get an exact number on how much Kansans in general pay on seed, but specifically Kansas farmers. However, we estimate it's close to $1 billion that farmers pay for seed. Probably that's a conservative estimate. And then in addition to that, just for like one farmer paying for seed on a quarter section, this is very back of napkin math, but for 240 units of soybeans on 160 acres, we're thinking that would cost a farmer $10,800. And that's just for one quarter section. A lot of our agricultural seed dealers are going to be selling, for hundreds and thousands of acres of crops. So wholesaler even having to pay $30 more for an annual registration, I don't know that you'll necessarily see that change the price of what your farmer pays for their seed. Thank you.
Representative Gardner or Representative Droege, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was curious when these, like Tractor Supply, did they pay one dealer or do they pay one for each store?
I believe it's for each store, yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that testimony. Now, when we get to the bottom end of the food chain here to people selling some tomato plants out in front of the hardware store or some locally produced garden seed, what level do they, if they sell to the public in a public location, what point do they have to have a retailer's license to do that?
Thank you. Specifically for horticulture seeds, they would not be regulated by this program. That would not be under this program's jurisdiction. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Roth?
To follow up on the former representative's question, so at farmer's market, if someone's got some plants there that they're selling that they raised, they don't have to have a license for that?
I believe they would probably need a live plant dealer's license, if any license, but not a seed, agricultural seed license, unless they're selling grass seed or agricultural
Well, I've just
seed.
seen at farmers markets, you know, they'll have flowers. I can't think of the names of them, but they're little round bush and a thing and grow up with flowers. And then they have, you can get tomato and pepper plants and stuff like that that they've grown in their little local greenhouse. And they're not commercial, they're just doing at the local farmers market. So, but they would need a retailer's license.
Let me double check and get back to you. I think they would probably need a live plant dealer's license. It I think depends on the volume. And also, I probably shouldn't say this, but we are probably not aware of everyone that sells something at a farmer's market. I will just say that quickly.
Yep.
And just for a non-farmer type of person, so like when I'm driving out in the country and I'll see a sign that says seed dealer, so that would be who you're talking about, basically selling the seeds.
Right. Good question. There is an exemption for a seed called bin run seed, which is really a farmer-to-farmer transaction on seed. And that is not regulated. There's an exemption for that. It depends on how much seed they're selling or what kind of seed they're selling. If they're selling any kind of protected variety, then they probably need to be registered with the state of Kansas. But there is still an exemption for certain farmer-to-farmer transactions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Anything else for Josh? Seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have no other proponents, opponents, or neutral. Anyone here wishing to speak on this bill? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on House Senate Bill 425. We, with the remaining two, we want to probably keep it between 3 and 5 minutes. So if my vice chair would keep a count. I know many people travel from ways away. We want to make sure everything gets in and the hour doesn't get too late. So let's open up the hearing on Senate Bill 473. So Kyle, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Senate Bill 473 would authorize Audubon of Kansas to convey certain property in Waubonsee County and require any deeds or conveyances related to such property conveyance be reviewed and approved by the State Historical Society. KSA 75-2731 was enacted in 2006 and authorized the State Historical Society to convey certain property in Waubonsee County to Audubon of Kansas. This conveyance statute contains a restraint on alienation provision that explicitly prohibits Audubon of Kansas from conveying any portion of the property. And by conveying, I mean transferring. The bill would remove the prohibition and affirmatively provide that Audubon of Kansas may convey the property provided the deeds and conveyances are reviewed and approved by the State Historical Society. The bill would become effective upon publication in the Register. I'll be happy to take any preliminary questions, but I did peek ahead at the testimony, and I know the conferees will have a bit more context, I think.
All right. Quick question for Kyle. Representative Blex.
Thank you, Kyle, for that. I'm assuming this property was donated to Audubon, and now it takes legislative approval to convey that, and probably had something in the deed that said it can't be conveyed. Am I assuming that right?
The prohibition on the conveyance was put in statute by the legislature, so the legislature needs to come back and strike out that restriction.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none. All right. Walter, you got a fiscal note for us?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The fiscal note says the State Historical Society indicates that enactment of the bill would have no fiscal effect.
Okay, thank you so much. Anything for Walter? Seeing none, our first up for oral proponents, Bruce Waugh, who's a board member of the Prairie Guards. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. I appreciate it. On behalf of the Mount Mitchell Prairie Guards, I'm Bruce Waugh. And as kind of been alluded, this is really a housekeeping matter between Audubon of Kansas and the Prairie Guards. I will be quick, but I think I can give you a little context of what this is all about. This is 30 acres on a hillside in Wabaunsee County, and it's difficult to imagine that there is any 30-acre pasture land in the state of Kansas that has more historical significance than this 30 acres. In 1856, William Mitchell came from Connecticut to Kansas to fight for Kansas's inclusion as a free state. And he moved to northern Wabaunsee County. His homestead's 3 miles south of the Kansas River on what is now Highway 99 south of Wamego. Mitchell became the captain of the Beecher Bible and Rifle Colony. And probably a lot of you know the Beecher Bible and Rifle Church still exists in Wabaunsee County. It's just down the road from that. Captain Mitchell's home, which still exists today, was part of the Underground Railroad. It was a stop on the Underground Railroad. And across the road to the south was a quarter section of land that has this tremendous hill, magnificent hill. And for 100 years, it was known as Mitchell's Hill. In 1953, Captain Mitchell's son donated that 30-acre hilltop to the state to then create a public park in honor of his father and the Connecticut Beecher Bible and Rifle Colony, and the park was to be known as Mount Mitchell. For 50 years, the state didn't do anything to actually create a public park on that 30 acres. And in 2002, the decision was made to give the property back to the Mitchell family. And at that point, something very remarkable happened. Members of the Mitchell family, the descendants of Captain Mitchell, and Michael Stubbs, local historians here with us today, got together and came to the state and said, we will make a park. Just let us do that. And the state agreed that that could happen, and that legislation that you were talking about that was enacted in 2006 was kind of a result of that. Right before the legislation was going to become effective, the Attorney General determined that what needed to happen was that it needed to be deeded to a 501c3. And the Mitchell and Michael Stubbs group, the Prairie Guards today, was not a 501c3 at the time. So Audubon of Kansas stepped up and said, we will agree to hold that deed. And that's the legislation that took place in 2006, and the deed was transferred to Audubon with that caveat that they couldn't transfer it out. From that moment, for the last 20 years, the Mount Mitchell Prairie Guards have created the park that exists today. We are now a 501c3, have been since 2009. This is one of the most visited state historic parks in the state. Today, the park is not just the 30-acre hilltop, but it's over 160 acres. We've expanded the park over 130 more acres. The park was in bad shape. The area, that quarter section now, is a perfectly restored, pristine tallgrass prairie with walking trails, facilities, signage, a kiosk explaining the history in the tallgrass prairie. The Prairie Guards have raised over $1 million. Volunteers have spent thousands of hours developing the park. We hold events at the park. There are wildflower walks. Schools and scout groups come to the park to learn about its history and to experience the tallgrass prairie up close. I said earlier, this is one of the most unique landscapes, grasslands in Kansas history. And it is kind of remarkable. First, it has the Mitchell Homestead that was part of the Underground Railroad. And in the park, still exists today, is evidence of the north-south trail of the Underground Railroad that led to Mitchell's house. It was a sacred, the mound was a sacred place to the indigenous people over 1,200 years ago. So it's got two things. Remarkably, that same 30 acres was part of the trails going west of the early pioneers. So on the park, you have a north-south trail of the Underground Railroad crossing the east-west trail of pioneers. And finally, it is a restored tallgrass prairie. All four things make it a remarkable place. Audubon has held the deed for the last 20 years, and we work with Audubon. It's a good relationship. The Prairie Guards hold the deed to the vast majority of the park, the 164 acres today. The original Prairie Guards, including me, are now in their 70s, and we're turning control over to a younger generation. And it makes sense that the deed to the 30 acres be held by the Prairie Guards, which it would have been 20 years ago had we been a 501c3. We are now, and as I said, it's kind of a housekeeping endeavor. So we just think we would like, before we move on, to tidy up the paperwork for the next generation of people that are going to run the park. And thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Bruce right quick? Representative Minix?
Thank you, Bruce. Quite a story. I enjoyed it. I'm not sure if it's for Bruce or for our reviser, but this bill pertains strictly and only in narrow scope to this particular property?
Yes.
Okay. I have some historical sites out west I want to protect also. Last Calvary Indian battle at 1884. And the locals have done very well in supporting that deal, and I applaud you in the efforts and what you've done in Waubonsee County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Does that transfer deed include the original 30 acres and the additional, the total 164? You says, the bill says certain property.
It is just the 30 acres. That's the only acreage that was affected by the legislation 20 years ago. The 120 to 130 acres, we raised money and purchased.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Also a proponent, Jacqueline Augustine, who is Executive Director of the Audubon of Kansas. So welcome to committee.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I'm the Executive Director for Audubon of Kansas, and we are wanting to transfer this property to the Mount Mitchell Prairie Guards because we have been reviewing, all our documents of how we acquired it, and it's very clear that the Mitchell family wanted the history of this property remembered. Audubon of Kansas, we have an environmental conservation mission, not a history mission. And plus the Mount Mitchell Prairie Guards, their history with the land itself, their efforts to expand, and they're really much more prepared to honor the history of the area. We do intend to continue to partner with the Mount Mitchell Prairie Guards to maintain that wonderful tallgrass prairie that's out there with the tremendous diversity of plants and insects. So we aren't leaving the area, we just want to make sure that we are honoring the Mount Mitchell family's desires to make it a historic park.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions for Ms. Augustine? Seeing none, thank you for being here. We also have written-only proponents for Catherine Mitchell Buster, Mount Mitchell Prairie Guards, and Patrick Zeller, who's Executive Director of the Kansas State Historical Society. He is also here in the back in case we do have any other questions. I have anyone else wanting to testify on this bill? I see no opponents or neutral. Seeing nothing else, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 473. Thank you. We're back on time. Okay, we will now open up the hearing on Senate Bill 344. And I think with our time, we should be able to go about 3 to 4 minutes. I think we should be okay with everyone. So, Senate Bill 344, Kyle, one more time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 344, as amended, would require records of inspections conducted under the Kansas Pet Animal Act to be maintained by the Department of Agriculture, Division of Animal Health for not less than 5 years. The bill would also authorize animal shelters to place certain animals needing treatment or care in foster homes and require shelters to display photographs of animals at a location other than the shelter during the holding period. So concerning the retention of inspection records, under current law, the department is authorized to inspect any premises that is licensed or permitted under the Kansas Pet Animal Act, including animal distributor premises, pet shops, pounds, animal shelters, and retail breeder premises. The department also inspects any premises seeking a permit or license under the act. Currently, the department maintains records of inspection. Only records of deficiency or violation are subject to the Act's statutory retention schedule. They must be maintained for no longer than 3 years after remediation. The bill would amend KSA 47-1709 to require that all records of inspections under the Act be maintained for at least 5 years. Additionally, animals held at an animal shelter may be released at any time to the legal owner, released in any manner if the animal was a gift to the shelter, moved to a veterinary hospital for treatment or observation, or euthanized if the animal is beyond recovery. Senate Bill 344 would add that animal shelters may place any neonate animal in a foster home if such animal needs care that the shelter cannot provide. The term neonate would be defined to mean a newborn animal that is less than 8 weeks of age and dependent on such animal's mother or a caregiver due to undeveloped biological functions related to feeding, regulation of body temperature, and elimination of waste. Shelters would also be required to display a photograph of any animal that is held at a location other than the shelter during the holding period, such as a veterinary hospital or for neonates when they're in foster care. Such photographs would be displayed at the shelter and on the shelter's website. Senate Bill 344, as amended, would become effective upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to take any preliminary questions.
Any questions for Kyle? What's that? He was over 5 minutes. You're over 5 minutes, so shoot. All right, seeing none, thank you. Walter, you got more airtime today than this is the day.
Very interesting, yes, indeed. The fiscal note for this one, again, is as the bill was introduced, the Kansas Department of Agriculture indicates that the enactment of the bill would not have a fiscal effect on its operations, and any fiscal effect associated with the bill is not reflected in the FY 2027 Governor's Budget Report.
Okay, any questions for Walter? Seeing none, we're not going to wait. We're going to continue to proceed. I've reached out to the Senate to see where they are, if they're still on the floor, what's going on. So this is from Senator Doug Shane, and so what he told me, if he can't make it down to testify, that he likes the bill the way it is coming across to us for what it's worth. He asked me to pass that on. I did. And so also, just so you're aware, we'll work this next week. So we're not going to be doing a quick one on this. This will be next week when we go through this. We'll talk about it in a bit. Okay, well, let's start out. We're going to start out with something we always, one of the things we always enjoy every year is to have the interns from the Department of Agriculture come and present to our committee. And it's not as exciting as raccoons this year, but still has to do with pets or possibilities. So our first oral proponent will be Cappy Hoding, who is a policy intern for the Department of Agriculture. She resides in the 110th District. So it's double good. So Cappy, welcome to committee, and you're on.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, Chairman Rajas and members of the committee. Like you shared, I'm Cappy Hoding. I'm the policy intern for the Kansas Department of Agriculture this spring as part of the Flinchbaugh Food and Ag Policy Fellowship. I'm a junior at K-State majoring in ag communications. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of Senate Bill 344. The Animal Facilities Inspection Program of the KDA Division of Animal Health is charged with regulating companion animal facilities, which require licensing in accordance with the Kansas Pet Animal Act. The act requires licensing and inspection of all dog and cat breeders, pounds, shelters and animal rescues, pet shops, research facilities, in-state and out-of-state distributors, and boarding facilities. This bill's component focuses on the shelters. SB 344 seeks to allow stray neonate animals to serve out the required 3 business day stray hold period in a foster home. Specifically, as amended, the bill would allow shelters to transfer neonates, puppies, and kittens to foster homes. Sick or injured animals need special care and should be seen by a veterinarian to determine the type of care they should receive based on their ailments. Unlike neonates, it is more likely that a sick or injured animal may be owned and lost. This law has provided that a shelter shall hold sick and injured animals directly or under the care of a veterinarian. By allowing orphan neonates or newborn animals to be placed in a foster home, it allows individuals to provide the intensive care required. The Senate committee added an amendment that would standardize record keeping both for the agency as well as provide additional regulatory certainty for licensees by requiring all records to be kept by the agency for 5 years from their creation. The agency appreciates the collaboration on this bill and legislative support to address SB 344. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify on SB 344. In its current form, the agency would be in support of the legislation. My colleagues at KDA or I am happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any questions for Cappy? Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Cappy. Share with us in just a little bit, where's home? What are future plans after you graduate from K-State?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm from Stockton, Kansas, so in Rooks County. Like I said, I'm at K-State right now, and I hope to go to graduate school for international ag or ag leadership following graduating in May of 2027, and then hopefully work in the food and ag policy space.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that explanation. In this bill, then, does this deal with any animal, or is this just any pet animal that is determined to be a neonate?
You can phone a friend, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you, members of the committee. I'm Kelsey Olson with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. This specifically is for cats and dogs that may be at a shelter specifically.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this would not include cattle or horses or goats or sheep?
That is correct. The Pet Animal Act in another part references a very specific set of animals that this applies to.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you, Cappy, appreciate it. Also joining us is Senator Doug Shane. We tried to wait. They didn't like my singing or anything else, so we decided to go ahead and move on, but We know you have busy work, so welcome to committee.
You bet. Thank you, Chair Rogers. Good afternoon, committee. It's dangerous to let the two veterinarians sit next to each other. But as a fellow veterinarian, this is a bill that I was pleased to introduce to the Senate Agriculture Committee. It's a good, sensible bill that just gives our shelters a little bit more flexibility on how they handle these neonates during that 3-day holding period. It's a very narrowly focused bill, narrowly tailored bill. And at this point in time, I think it's a good, clean bill for the body to move forward with. This passed the Senate 40-0 and is going to be an important, just small change, but an impactful change for our shelters. So ask you to look at this bill favorably, and I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for Senator Shane? Representative Plex?
Thank you, Senator. If this animal needs some attention, who's responsible for payment? I'm assuming these people are like rehabilitators and, licensed, and they'll be unpaid themselves. But what about the animal? If it gets sick, is there some kind of a provision for payment of a vet service, or?
I'll allow the other proponents to speak to how shelters manage veterinary, medical, and health expenses for animals that end up being in their care.
Thank you.
Okay. Representative Droege?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Shane. I was just curious, so they're going to be just 3-day period that they're going to neonates, and then they go back to the shelter and be euthanized?
No, they would still be eligible to remain in foster care if that's the intent of the shelter. The hang up that was happening is just during this 3-day hold period, there was a bit of a change in application of the statute for our shelters, where there was a strict interpretation of that 3-day hold as applied to the neonates. And so that's when the risk of euthanasia for neonatal puppies, kittens was happening. It was just during this 3-day period. After the 3-day hold, they can be eligible to go out and be fostered. So this just clarifies that they don't need to wait for that whole 3 days when it's surrendered, basically puppies and kittens.
Thank you.
Other questions for the senator? We'll let you get back to it. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, committee.
Appreciate it. Okay. Up next, we have Riley Goin, who's Deputy Director of the Kansas Pet Advocates. Welcome to committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I've sat in this room a lot of time, but I don't think I've actually been up here to speak yet, so thank you. So first of all, my name is Riley Goin. I'm the Deputy Director of Kansas Pet Advocates. We are a statewide leader in advancing data and research-driven policies and laws that protect the lives and health of Kansas pets. And Senate Bill 344 is directly targeted to protect the lives of Kansas pets. As Senator Shane said earlier, it passed the Senate unanimously. And the goal of this bill and the purpose of the bill that I will be speaking to is allowing shelters to place neonate puppies and kittens that are less than 8 weeks old that need help performing basic bodily functions like eating, drinking, staying warm, expelling waste. It allows them to place them in foster homes during that state 3-day hold, so that way they can provide the around-the-clock care that they need. And if somebody wants to come and reclaim their lost box of puppies or kittens, the shelter posts photos online and at the shelter, so that way somebody who's a potential owner can come in and reclaim them. The current state law says that these animals must be on the premises during the stray hold, which is great if it's your lab that's escaped your yard. But for puppies and kittens that need around-the-clock care, that cannot necessarily be provided in a shelter environment due to their limited staffing and resources. And these animals have never been reclaimed. We've spoken with many shelters, shelter workers, volunteers. These animals do not get reclaimed. The Senate did amend the bill so that way it stayed focused only on neonates. That was our primary focus, and that's what the issue that caused this bill to be written. We defined neonate, and then the Senate chose to add in that records retention schedule. So I urge the committee to please pass Senate Bill 344 as it was amended by the Senate with no further changes. This is a great bill that solves an immediate problem and will have an immediate life-saving impact on these puppies and kittens that are entering our shelters. And I am happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you. Questions for Riley? First up, Representative Roth.
I have a question. What happens to the neonates if they die in the care of somebody else? Who's responsible for their deaths?
So as I'm sure that many people are aware, unfortunately, when a litter of animals is born, an animal will be lost. And that is just the unfortunate part of working in animal welfare, whether you're dealing with puppies and kittens or whether you're dealing with livestock, is occasionally you do lose an animal. It's nobody's fault if an animal has been abandoned or orphaned, that it dies because it just can't survive. We mourn the loss of that animal and we do our best to save the remaining litter mates.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Up next, Cindy Mollentine with the Humane Society of Greater Kansas City. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sydney Mulentine. I'm the CEO of the Humane Society of Greater Kansas City. I'm a certified nonprofit professional, and I've worked in animal welfare, specifically in shelters in Kansas, for 24 years. I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 344. I want to start by echoing and saying that this is a very narrow and very focused change. It only applies to stray animals, and it furthermore only applies to stray, underaged, or unweaned animals. This change would allow shelters to place neonate animals into foster homes while still meeting the statute's clear access requirement. This proposed change is not radical, it's practical, it's humane, and it's rooted in the realities of modern animal sheltering. The way the current statute is written has devastating and entirely preventable consequences. First, neonate animals cannot survive in the shelter environment. Newborn puppies and kittens require round-the-clock care. Shelters are not designed, staffed, or funded to provide that level of intensive neonatal care 24 hours a day. When neonates are forced to remain in shelters, the outcome is tragically predictable. What we will see is starvation, medical decline, and death. Second, the current interpretation of the statute directly results in unnecessary euthanasia of perfectly healthy and savable animals. When foster homes cannot be utilized, shelters are left with impossible choices that directly conflict with their missions, their professional ethics, and the expectations of the communities they serve. Ending the lives of healthy newborn animals, not because they are suffering, but because the law prevents that life-saving placement, is neither humane nor responsible. It's very important to be clear here. Placing neonate animals into foster care does not prevent shelters from reuniting lost pets with their owners. With that said, in my 24 years of working in shelters specifically, I've never had a single neonate reclaimed by an owner. The likelihood of reclaim for neonates is extremely slim, but the likelihood of death if they remain in the shelter is extraordinarily high. The current statute, as applied, turns a stray hold into an automatic death sentence for the most vulnerable animals that we encounter. In Kansas shelters, we really want to do the right thing. This proposed amendment allows them to do exactly that without compromising public access, owner rights, or legal accountability. I really urge this committee to support the proposed change as is in Senate Bill 344. It's a common sense update that reflects the realities of animal care, honors the ethical responsibilities we have to prevent needless suffering, and ensures that Kansas laws support life-saving practices. I do want to answer a couple of questions, if that's okay, from Representative Blex. The payment of services usually is from the shelters. Shelters usually cover the cost of veterinary services if needed while in a foster home. And then I did want to specify that there is a 3-day stray hold, but that is only business days. So in some cases, if an animal comes in on a Thursday, that 3 days is Thursday, Friday, and then Monday. So we also have the weekend that we have to keep in mind there. And then who is responsible for the death? There's something in the veterinary field, sheltering field called failure to thrive. We see that a lot in neonates that do not have a mom with them. The chance of survival drastically decreases. It's called failure to thrive. So a lot of times if we have neonates that are going to untrained homes or community members that are trying to do the right thing, that failure to thrive percentage goes through the roof, which is why this is so important that we can send them to trained fosters that know how to provide round-the-clock care. And with that, I'll answer any other questions you guys may have.
Thank you very much. Questions for Ms. Mollentine. Representative Roth.
I was just wondering, when the neonates go to a foster home for care, does the foster home charge for that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No, in most cases, the shelters and rescues provide all supplies and cover all medical for those foster
Thank you very
homes.
much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Minix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sydney, you've got a lot of experience here. I want to ask a couple questions. One, if you have a mother come in with a litter, dogs or cats, say maybe a broken leg or something, you leave the litter with the mother, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're basically talking about a litter that comes in that does not have a mother at the time.
Correct.
Okay. How many hours a day is your area staffed?
So we are open 7 days a week, 8 to 5. We do not do overnights, nor do most shelters.
How often do kittens need to be fed?
Every 2 hours.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Thanks
you.
for being here. Up next, Emily Wallace, Great Plains SPCA. Welcome to committee.
Oh, thank you for having me. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is my first time being here. It's an honor to go after two other powerful women that are obviously in favor of this bill. So as mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Operations at Great Plains SPCA. We are a 501c3. We operate in Merriam, Kansas, and we serve 8 different municipalities throughout Johnson County and about 7,000 animals annually. So I think a lot of the points that I would like to make have already been shared. To me, as others have said, this is a common sense bill that would allow us to essentially save these animals. It's not humane to let them sit in the shelter. I mean, I would go so far as to say there's probably a 0% chance that many of these animals would survive if we were forced to keep them on site. Whereas in a foster home, as others again have mentioned, that the likelihood of them surviving significantly increases, you know, even though we know that some may not make it. So ultimately, we would like to be able to utilize these foster homes to send these animals, you know, still willing to make sure they're on the website, making sure they are available for viewing. If an owner were to come forward, I can also share, I ran an analysis on our data just from the last 5 years. I could go back farther, but for the sake of time, just for the last 5 years, we have also not had any stray neonate animals reclaimed by their owners. It also, to me, seems pretty unlikely that an animal under the age of 8 weeks would venture off or escape the yard or anything like that. I mean, you know, if they're not able to eat on their own, they're probably not able to run away. So I can confirm we've not had any owners come forward, but again, this would not negate our ability to send those animals home if someone were looking for them. And ultimately, again, as others have said, this is the best way to keep these animals safe and healthy. For time's sake, I will stop there and see if there are any questions.
All right, Emily, thank you. Any questions, Ms. Wallace? Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a matter of policy at your establishment, when obviously all these animals are brought in by people, what steps do you take to make sure that these animals, of finding the history of these animals and determine whether or not they were brought in by the owner of the animal, or if they might have been acquired from another owner without their permission?
So a lot of times they will be brought in by animal control officers or members of law enforcement. They might bring us some information, such as where the animals were found, you know, if anyone called and reported it to them. But more often than not, it's difficult to find that information out, especially with animals this young. They're not going to be microchipped. They're not going to have any form of identification. So we will work with local law enforcement agencies. You know, we're asking questions. Sometimes I feel like I am a detective in training, just trying to figure out, you know, where did you find this animal? Why was it out by itself? But it can be difficult to figure that out, but we will work with our municipalities to try to get to the bottom of it. You know, even going so far sometimes as to look on social media and see if people have posted about it. There are a lot of groups specifically for lost pets in Johnson County. We also have some folks that we work with in the volunteer realm that are, you know, constantly online looking for posts. So social media is also a big way, but I would say working with law enforcement and then looking online to see if we can find anything.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for your answer. Do you accept neonate animals from citizens that bring them in, or are they all brought in by animal control or law enforcement?
Usually it is through animal control and law enforcement, since we are contracted to serve them. I mean, it doesn't mean that we may not sometimes accept them from members of the public, but typically it is through our contracted cities.
Okay. All right, we will now go to our most inquisitive member of the committee, Representative Roth. You're not done yet. Oh, no.
You'll have to forgive me. This
I
is
know
my
you're
first time.
fine. You're
I thought you
fine.
were announcing the next person.
You know what? Tonight you can watch all these past hearings of the Ag Committee on YouTube, and so next time you come back,
Okay.
just
All
kidding.
right. I'll come back
Representative
with
Roth.
my research.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the former representative prompted a question, and then you kind of maybe answered it, but it made me think, so if I, as a citizen, just bring you a box full of baby kittens, you don't accept them?
I mean, we will if we can, if we have the means to care for them. But again, it also depends on, our current population, who we have on site. And also, it would be great if there were the owner of those animals, because that makes it easier, so then we can send them to foster. But ultimately, if we don't have the means to send an animal to foster because it is a stray, we're not going to accept them, because they're ultimately better off in the home with the person that found them versus with us.
Okay, and then so if I left and just left a box of kittens at your driveway?
Of course, we're going to help them. Of course
okay.
we will.
And so, but if someone does come in and you can take them, do you take the person's name and
Yes, we do.
address and phone number
And a copy
who
of
brought
their
them in?
license as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, very good. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Well, now you're done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we believe we have Jasmine Kyle, from the Southeast Kansas Humane Society on WebEx. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're on.
Hey, good afternoon, members of the committee. Thank you so much again for the opportunity to testify as a proponent on Senate Bill 344 today. Again, my name is Jasmine Kyle, and I'm the director of the Southeast Kansas Humane Society located in Pittsburgh, Kansas. We're a licensed nonprofit animal shelter serving Crawford County and its surrounding areas. I'm supporting Senate Bill 344 because it amends the current definition of the Kansas Pet Animal Act that requires shelters to keep stray neonate puppies and kittens on site during the 3 business day stray hold period, rather than allowing placement into immediate foster homes as we have responsibly done so in the past. This change has created a serious barrier to life-saving care for newborn animals who require, as you've heard, round-the-clock feeding, warmth, monitoring, and medical support. Our shelter simply is not equipped to provide this level of overnight care that neonatals need. Neonatal puppies and kittens, they cannot survive without that constant care. They have to be fed, as you've heard, every 2 hours, kept at precise temperatures with heating pads, even stimulated to relieve themselves. At the SEK Humane Society, we do not have, as you've heard with other shelters, 24-hour neonatal staffing that's required to safely care for multiple newborn litters. Foster homes allow us to save the lives of these babies. So, for example, there was a case where a box was brought in with abandoned newborn kittens, only 2 days old, into our shelter. That, of course, required all of that medical knowledge and overnight care. Foster placement, if it had not been possible, these kittens would have medically declined and most likely would have passed away in the middle of the night. Senate Bill 344 is a practical and humane solution that supports not only our life-saving shelter operations, but the many across the state of Kansas. I will echo what you've heard as well today. In my 8 years, we have never had somebody come and reclaim a neonatal. It has never happened. So with that, we please ask that you support Senate Bill 344 today and the work that animal shelters perform every day in the service to its Kansas communities. And I can, of course, answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kyle. Any questions? I think not. So thank you. Stay on the line just in case we have something at the end. And also we have, as a proponent, Anne Marie Yasula with the League of Kansas Municipalities. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Anne Marie Yatsula. I'm a staff attorney with the League of Kansas Municipalities, and I'm happy to be here this afternoon as a proponent on this bill. Our members appreciate that it would make it possible for volunteers to care for neonate animals in need when shelters cannot. We have one concern with this bill, and it relates to the website posting requirement. As it's currently drafted, shelters would need to post a photograph of the animals in the holding period in their shelter and on their website. And this might be a minor concern, but there are cities that don't have websites to post on. So if it's a shelter that's connected to a city, a municipally contracted, or it's the municipality's shelter, they would have no way to comply with this. So we want to make sure that they're still able to comply with the law as it's written, and also maybe use methods of getting the word out about these animals that work for the community. So putting up a picture in City Hall or the post office or the Casey's that everyone goes to. So I have an amendment attached to my testimony here. It's brief. If you're following along on the bill itself, it's on page 3, lines 29 and 31. All it does is add at the end, during the holding period established in paragraph 1, a photograph of an animal that is at a location other than the shelter shall be displayed at the shelter and on the shelter's website. And the language I've suggested is if the shelter has a website. So it would keep that requirement in for the folks who have websites, but give flexibility to those who do not. And with that, I'd stand for questions.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Yatsula? Seeing none? What's that? Oh, sure. All right. I think we're okay. All right. Any other questions for any of the conferees on the proponents? Seeing none. We have written only proponents: Ashley Flores from Great Plains SPCA, Trent Eddy, a veterinarian from Great Plains SPCA, Jacqueline Marino, Great Plains SPCA, Vanessa Cowie, Prairie Paws Animal Shelter, CEO Ellen Quinter, President of Powell's Animal Rescue, and Jane Dockery, Animal Care and Control Manager for the City of Olathe. Is there anyone else wishing to testify as a proponent of Senate Bill 344? Seeing none, I have no other testimony here, either as opponents or neutral. Anyone else here wishing to testify as an opponent or neutral to the bill? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 344. Okay, committee, thank you so much for your work. We got done a little quicker than I thought, so that's very good. Okay, announcements. Next meeting will be Tuesday. So no meeting tomorrow, Friday, or Monday. So next meeting will be Tuesday. What we'll do is we will hear from Dr. Dan Mosier from the K-State College of Agriculture. He is the interim dean, and so he will give his presentation. We're also planning on working these bills that day. These three we heard today. We have, no, wait a minute. These three, because we have another one though, right, too? Oh, that's right. Okay, sorry, I apologize. Get ahead of I'm already a week ahead, see, that's it. So our plan is to work these three bills that we heard today on Tuesday. So if you have amendments, if you have any concerns, please let me know. If not, that'll be our plan moving forward. We will do the K-State presentation first, and then work the bills, so be aware of that. Anything else for the good of the committee? Seeing none, thank you all for being here today, and we will see you again here on Tuesday. Tuesday, we are adjourned.